Today, we're going to talk about hay fever and homeopathy. Things haven't quite started blooming here, but they're blooming where you are, aren't they, Alex?
Yeah, they started like 2, 3 weeks ago, although we have very, very rainy and windy weather. But yes, we are officially in springtime and everything is blooming over here.
I'm
Hasn't
so
been.
jealous. You guys get all of the good stuff early. We're just starting to see things pop up here in Maine. And then we got hit with a whole bunch of snow, and it's a little buried now. So they'll make their way back through. But
I know.
before we know it, we're going to be sneezing.
Well, the ones that are sensitive to pollen, yes.
Yes, yeah.
And
Around
that's
here,
how
it's,
it is.
yeah. I don't know about over there. Do you get the pine pollen that we get over here? We have a lot of pine trees.
No, not really.
No.
Definitely
Okay.
not London. No, but we
Okay.
don't have many pine trees anyway.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm in the pine tree state, so there's no avoiding that. So today, as I said, we're going to talk about hay fever. And Dr. Alex, would you please share with us what the meaning of hay fever is and how it shows up?
So basically, hay fever, also called allergic rhinitis, is basically an allergic reaction or an extreme respiratory allergy affecting the nose, throat. It can affect the eyes and the sinus as well. And the symptoms are basically caused by an extreme response of the immune system, mistaking a harmless substance such as pollen, but it could be dust, it could be any other thing, for a harmful one. So the body starts releasing chemicals like histamine, and these chemicals make all the symptoms like the watery discharge, and the symptoms are very similar to a common cold.
Mhm.
So how do we distinguish a common cold since the symptoms are so similar to hay fever? Well, a common cold might include fever. Hay fever rarely has a fever. The symptoms are usually, and the other thing is that the common cold usually is over within 2 weeks max, if not earlier, while the hay fever symptoms remain for a longer period of time, usually during the season, the spring and summer. So these symptoms usually are a clear discharge, a sneezing, nasal congestion that can even alternate between discharge and congestion, itching eyes, and sometimes itching of the palate, itching of the throat, and itching of the nose. In a few cases, more extreme cases, it can be accompanied by a wheezing cough as well. Other eye symptoms are redness and swelling of the eyelids, pain, loads of lacrimation, and it's very similar to the symptoms of a conjunctivitis.
Mhm. So a few of the rubrics that I found, and honestly, I was surprised in our software that it was called hay fever instead of rhinitis. Mind irritability in hay fever. We can get a little edgy when we're dealing with this. It can be annual hay fever. It can show up, every year you're feeling this sensation in your nose. Whenever they cut the grass or the hay in your area, it can trigger that. And some people actually have asthma kicked off
Yeah.
by hay fever, which can be, very extreme. Um, Headaches are quite common in hay fever. And one of the things that you talked about earlier was the tickling of the palate layer, where you're taking your tongue and just rubbing it constantly on the top of your roof of your mouth just to get that relief. The throat, the larynx, and the trachea, a lot of dryness. And then your voice can really change and get very hoarse. No pun intended with hay fever.
So the headaches usually are more prominent if we have congestion and blockage, and especially if the sinus are involved. A wonderful remedy for hay fever due or really aggravated when the grass or hay is cut is Volcamara, which we are not talking today, because today we picked up some remedies that are
Yes,
more
there are a lot of remedies.
in animals. So and the animals, you know, they are permanently on the grass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just
So
dropping it in there.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's a really good thing to know. And there are a lot of remedies. So today we're going to cover 6. And the first one is probably my favorite. This is the one that I reach for. It seems to work the best for me, is ALLIUM CEPA and onion. When you're cutting an onion, whether you're cooking or what have you, you will get that watery discharge from your nose and watery eyes and things sting and burning. And the remedy addresses those symptoms when it shows up for hay fever as well. You're not going to have a fever. The fluent watery discharge from the nose, it's not quite the faucet, but it's pretty close. And sneezing, watery eyes, tearing, lacrimation, nasal discharge is copious and acrid. So it can cause burning in the nostrils. If you find that your nose gets that chapped and burning sensation around hay fever. And then sneezing is worse for animals in the stable because they're kind of trapped with all of these pollutants, the agitators, and they're better for open air. So if you're finding, you personally, if you're having these symptoms and you walk outside and you suddenly feel better, then ALLIUM might be the remedy that you want to look at. Is there anything else you'd like to share on that one, on that remedy, Alex?
No, well, yes and no. And when it comes to people, it's quite strange, because obviously the hay fever is induced by the pollen. And funnily enough, people are better outdoors than indoors, where the pollen count is much lower. And with the animals, it's the same thing, especially with horses. They will sneeze much more when they are in the stable than when they are out in the fields.
In the fresh air. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. So the next remedy is arsenicum. Talk to us about that, Alex.
So the arsenicum is similar. The symptoms are quite similar to the ALLIUM CEPA. So you will have the fluent watery discharge from the nose. Again, the discharge from the nose, in comparison to the lacrimation, the discharge from the nose is burning the nostrils. On people, you usually see the wings or the upper lip quite red, and commonly it's thought that it's because you keep cleaning your nose and using a paper or a tissue, and that causes the redness, but actually it's not. It's the quality of the discharge that is quite acrid. Again, the main differentiation when we come to animals, to distinguish between ALLIUM CEPA or arsenicum, since the symptoms are so similar, is that the horse will be much more restless and anxious than in the case of ALLIUM CEPA, and he feels the cold and is much better once he is in the stables and much more restless, and the symptoms of the hay fever are much more aggravated when they are out in the open air.
Interesting. Very interesting. And the next remedy is ARUNDO. And this is a really tall grass, if I'm not mistaken. Does
Mm.
this grow in England? Because I'm not familiar with it.
I do not know
Don't
because
know.
so I don't do a prospective. But even if arundum is not present and the symptoms of the hay fever match these symptoms, despite if the grass is present or not, you just go with it, because within homeopathy we always match the symptoms to the picture
Of
that
course.
we have in front of us. So yes, arundum is quite a commonly used remedy for hay fever. With this remedy, there is a lot of itching. There is itching in the nose, in the nostrils, on the roof of the mouth, again, the palate, and can be itching in the eyes as well. You will see the horse trying to rub his muzzle to relieve the itching. And when there is itching everywhere, usually the itchiness of the nose or of the muzzle of the nostrils inside is much more prominent than the itching on the mouth and the itching in the eyes. So typically you will see the animal rubbing his nose. With kids, they keep rubbing their nose on their sleeves. You can see them cleaning, on on their clothes and using their arm quite a lot. And that's how, and there is the watery discharge of arundum can turn green later on, which is not very common with hay fever. Usually the discharge of hay fever is a watery, thin discharge. But with arundum, we can see it turning green later on.
And I did discover that it is grown in Southern Europe and North Africa. So that's the region that this particular tall grass comes from. But great distinction, especially about the green. Important to know that that's not an infection so much as their response to the hay fever.
Mm-hmm.
So ambrosia, we were just having this conversation, is actually ragweed. And a lot of people mistake ragweed for goldenrod here in the US. And this is really what you're looking for. When the thing is ragweed and goldenrod bloom at the same time. So a lot of people blame goldenrod for their hay fever, but it's actually solidago is not the reason that you're having those symptoms. It's this guy right here.
So the pollen allergy, if this is actually a very common allergen. And so if you know that you are, or if you have done an allergy test and you know that ragweed is the culprit, this remedy in potency before the season starts, it's fantastic as a prophylactic, as a preventative. So if you can have a couple of doses before, usually it decreases a lot of the symptoms, even keep putting the symptoms totally at bay. If you don't get the remedy in time and you get the symptoms usually are watery eyes with a lot of itching. With arundum, the itching is prominent in the nose. With ambrosia, it's prominent in the eyelids.
Yeah, you want to rub your eyes out when this hits.
So apart from the itching, there can be also burning and smarting of the eyes. There will be stuffiness, so the nose will be blocked, alternating with a nasal discharge. And a main characteristic, one of the keynotes of this remedy, is violent sneezing. And the sneezing can be so violent that can induce nosebleeds in some cases. So the sinus can be involved as well and affected, and a tickling cough might also be present. But mainly is the violent sneezing in conjunction with the itchiness
of the
of
eyes.
the eyelid.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I've experienced that firsthand, and it's great fun. So the next remedy we're looking at is Sabadilla. This is such a beautiful flower. And it was one of the first remedies that I was introduced to because of hay fever, interestingly enough. The spasmodic sneezing with a runny nose, dry itching, tickling in the nostrils, and wanting to rub it, again, going back and rubbing the nose. This is, you know, the kids rubbing their arms across their sleeves, which is such a common thing to happen this time of year. With the increased lacrimation, the eyes are inflamed and there's copious watery nasal discharge. With the horses, you're going to hear snorting noises. I imagine with people, you might get the same thing. Alex, what do you see as far as a distinction between between a person and a horse with regard to that?
Well, there is, with Sabadilla, again, there is itching everywhere, in the nose, in the eyes, but here, together with the itching, the watery discharge is not so much from the eyes, but mainly from the nose. So instead, not so much of rubbing, but the snorting of trying to, you know, clear the discharge together with the itchiness is one of the main characteristics. And there can be a wheezy breathing as well. So Sabadilla is also a very good remedy for asthma. So even if there is no asthma underneath, you in extreme cases you can the breathing can become very, very wheezy, and the dry cough might be present.
Great, excellent distinction. Thank you. And then the last remedy we're going to look at is euphrasia. And we've talked about this remedy in several of our broadcasts, but never with regard specifically to hay fever. So will you share with us some of the distinctions around that?
So with euphrasia, again, if we compare, it's going to be very similar to ALLIUM CEPA, but these remedies, although the symptoms are very, very common and the same, let's say, between these two remedies, the main differentiation between ALLIUM CEPA and euphrasia is that with ALLIUM CEPA, the nasal discharge is the acrid one, like in ARSENICUM. With euphrasia, the acrid discharge is from the eyes. So the eyes will be almost with symptoms of conjunctivitis. They can be red. There will be loads of lacrimation. Underneath, there will be quite a lot of redness and even inflammation. In animals, we can see what we call a muddy eye discharge. With people, you say gunk. You know, the discharge, it's watery during the day, but it can become almost purulent and yellow and thick. And again, with animals, you will see them blinking, and the rapid blinking, you know, to try to relieve the eye irritation and the extreme lacrimation.
My experience with euphrasia with regard to the rapid and frequent blinking to relieve irritation is I always want to put a cold, wet rag on my eyes because of the burning, because of the sensitiveness to the light. you know, all of the things that are going on. And of course, when your face, I always say your face kind of lights up, right? So your eyes are driving you crazy, your nose is driving you crazy. You're just kind of miserable. And with euphrasia, the first thing I grab is a cold, wet rag to put over my eyes just to relieve the irritation. So, you know, obviously an animal's not going to be able to do that, but if that's something that you reach for because of the burning pain, you might think of euphrasia as well.
Yeah, well, in this case is I would, you know, there is this amazing from the company Avogel,
Yes.
an eye drops with euphrasia, and it's fantastic. It really gives a sensation of coolness, and it relieves almost immediately the pain and the burning in the eye.
Sensations, yeah. And I will post a picture of those eye drops for people in the comments after the video goes up on the page, so that if you're interested in tracking some of that down for the upcoming season, then you'll know what you're looking for. So, you know, just talking about the pollen and allergens, I know that, you know, in England, you guys are starting to really ramp up to that. Over here, we're a little behind, though the southern states are starting to see things bloom. There are so many different remedies that address these things, and we wanted to highlight these 6. We have additional remedies that we're going to highlight in this month's newsletter, which should be out in just a couple of days. And if you find yourself suffering and miserable and you've tried a few remedies, or you don't know what remedies to try, please consider reaching out. We're happy to help, happy to support, and we certainly understand the level of suffering that people go through at this time of year with this kind of issue. And it's an allergy. The beautiful thing is that homeopathy can really stop this thing in its tracks. If you've been sneezing all morning and all of a sudden you get the right remedy and everything just kind of settles, the relief is wonderful. It's just really, really great to experience. So we hope that everybody has found this broadcast helpful. And if you have any questions or you'd like further information, please reach out, post questions on our page, reach out to us through Messenger. We have the farm group page where we talk a lot about animals and their conditions. We have a skin and eczema page that we talk about a variety of different things. And then there's our main page, Homeopathy United.